I don't know quite what it is, but every time I come to this country, I'm just happy. There's something very contagious about the enjoyment of life and the food, the wine, the sun. You know, it's just wonderful. We are in Verona, Italy. The reason why we are here, there are several reasons. The practical reason is that the Philharmonia Orchestra is playing a concert tonight in Verona, which I'm conducting. And the other reason is that my former teacher, composer Franco Donatoni, was born in Verona. I like the vibe. It's a very lively, livable place. I think the first time I ever came to Italy was when I was 19. I just booked a trip to Rome. I had this idea that I would find every known Michelangelo in Italy, and I almost did. So that was a nice first time experience in Italy. And then I decided that once I graduate from Sibelius Academy, I'll come to Italy to study. And the first time I came here to study was in, I believe, 1979. There was a group of young Finnish composers. We went to Siena to the summer courses. There's a summer academy organized by Accademia Chigiana, and Franco Donatoni was the legendary composition teacher that summer. Some of these friends of mine who were there with me are very well known these days, like Kaija Saariaho is one, Magnus Lindberg, and so on. We had a lot of fun. Donatoni was a very unusual individual. He was a very sort of technical composition teacher. He wasn't talking about things like expression or emotion or not even form. He was talking about notes, how to find the good notes and how to put them on paper. And there was absolutely no mystery about composing, in his opinion. It was all a craft. And on some level, he saw himself as an artisan, somebody who makes objects. And I realized that it's a very old Italian idea, going back to the medieval days. There was no distinction between artists and craftsmen, which I quite like. It's a sort of an honest, straightforward approach to creating things. Whether the things you create are immaterial or concrete objects, like this cappuccino cup, it doesn't make any difference. You make them as well as you can, and that's it, no mystery. That was Donatoni's message, basically. One of the oddest phone calls I've ever received was a guy from Copenhagen who called me some 20 years ago. He was organizing the Young Nordic Music Festival in Copenhagen. And he said, "So you know Donatoni, right?" I said, "Yeah, I do." So he is coming to Copenhagen to teach composition at the festival. But then there was a message from his son saying that we need to find a place for his camel. So what is this? Is it possible that he would have a camel? And I said, knowing Donatoni, it's entirely possible he would have a camel and he would want to travel with it. He was that kind of a man. I got a grant from the Kusevitsky Foundation for the LA Philharmonic to commission a new work from an international composer. So I got in touch with Donatoni and I asked him whether he could write it, and he said, yes, of course. And then I didn't hear anything. I mean, he had serious health issues already. But then I heard that he was taken into hospital, and then the next thing I heard was that he passed away. I was just very sad to hear the news. And I didn't expect to see the piece ever. And then some weeks after his death, there was a score in the mail. And the title of the piece is Esa, which moved me very much. And then I found out that he had been too ill to even write the notes physically himself. So he had dictated the piece on his deathbed to his students. We really get the feeling that, okay, this is a moment when his life ends. So in this way, it feels a bit like Kunst der Fuge, the last Bach piece where the last fugue kind of peters out and thins out, and finally there's only one voice, and then even that one voice stops. And in Esa, it's the same thing. The orchestra thins out. Finally, there's only a harp playing a simple scale, and then that's it. So that's obviously very moving and sad, but again, I would say typically Don Antoni-esque thing about the piece is that it's very happy. The feeling of the vibe of the piece is incredibly happy and jaunty and energetic, at times funny. And I somehow felt when I read through the score properly for the first time, I somehow felt that it was a message from my old teacher. It was like, you know, it's okay. This is how life goes. You're born and then you die, and that's fine. And enjoy. No worries, just enjoy it as long as you're in the middle of it. And that's the feeling that the audiences get out of this piece, and also musicians who play it. So there's no real narrative throughout this program other than there are composers who dealt with their own environment in a very interesting way. It's Italian and French music, but there's a French piece that is imitating Spanish music. So there's this kind of prism of lots of different approaches. Of course, Ravel's Scheherazade is a sort of a slightly postcardish take on the Orient, unspecified what the Orient means. But I think that for most artists, or many artists, there has been almost a defining moment, and that's the contact with the otherness. All of a sudden, you're facing something that is totally alien to you, and that energy usually gets things to move along. I mean, if we talk about Debussy, he heard Gamelan for the first time in Paris at the World Expo, and he was a changed man from that moment. Donatoni got in touch with John Cage in his youth and was actually severely disturbed by Cage's world-embracing ideas. I can imagine that somehow, because Donatoni was this meticulously organized composer who had these beautiful, pure systems, and then comes along Cage, who is just open for everything. Anything could be music, and even total silence can be music. And there's no right or wrong. And Franco couldn't actually compose anything for several years. And once he finally started composing again, he had found his voice. I mean, when I came to Italy from Finland, it was a massive cultural shift, but not that profound. It was mostly on the surface, because I had been trained pretty much in that school. But then when I went to LA, that was the otherness. This kind of very physical, very sort of open, relaxed, laid-back culture where the European canon was of no interest to anyone, apart from some scholars at the universities. So I couldn't use the same vocabulary and arguments I successfully used in Europe. So that was the otherness for me.